Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Procari, as you pointed out in your testimony, the Hudson River tunnels were completed in 1910 while the Titanic was under construction. They've lasted better than the Titanic, I must say. Amtrak's infrastructure along the Northeast Corridor is not just old, but it has suffered decades of underinvestment. Congress has for many years refused to provide adequate funding to bring the system into a state of good repair, let alone to upgrade it. We should have built new tunnels and expanded capacity in the Northeast Corridor long ago, but the damage to the existing tunnels caused by Hurricane Sandy has brought a real new urgency to the situation. The Gateway project, which includes the construction of a new tunnel under the Hudson, is widely recognized as one of the highest priority transportation projects in the country. But it will take more than lip service to get it done. We need a willingness to spend real federal funds. Mr. Procari and Mr. Moorman, which federal programs are you depending on to fund the Gateway project?
Excellent question. So as I mentioned, the local funding's in place for the first piece of it, the Portal North Bridge. The federal funding we have requested for that is what's called the Core Capacity Program within the Federal Transit Administration, because you're literally adding to the core capacity of an existing system. For the tunnel portion of the project, it would be similarly structured with a local commitment, and the federal commitment would likely be the Core Capacity Program as well. I should point out that for the tunnel, regardless of the delivery methodology, in other words, whether it's design, bid, build, public-private partnership, so it could well include private investment as part of it. In any event, a substantial federal investment component is required. In my experience nationwide, there is no project of national significance that doesn't require a federal funding investment.
Did you want to add to that, or?
I would point out, just to build on John's last point, that I'm a great believer in private investment. And
you would what? I'm sorry?
I'm a great believer in private investment and the efficiency of the private sector in delivering projects. But when you look at something like Gateway, we will do everything we can to structure a private investment component of that. But at the end of the day, that's a limited mechanism, and it just requires significant federal investment and significant state investment to get the job done.
Yeah. Now, the President's budget proposes to cut funding for Amtrak by almost 50%, which also includes cutting the Northeast Corridor by $93 million, or about 28%. The President's budget also recommends phasing down FDA capital investment grants, new starts, and core capacity grants. And DOT announced that it does not intend to sign any new full funding grant agreements under the program. Again, if Congress were to enact the President's budget request, or if FTA were to refuse to sign FFGA full funding grant agreements for new projects, what would that mean for the Gateway project?
To be clear, Mr. Nadler, for both the Portal Bridge and the tunnel, those projects cannot go forward without a federal commitment.
So the President's budget would foreclose these projects?
Yes, it would.
Thank you. Mr. Nissenbaum, if the administration proposes to cut all of these important transportation programs, how does the administration expect to fund the Gateway project?
So, as you know, Congressman, the Gateway program is made up of a series of projects, independent projects, starting with Portal Bridge, the Hudson Tunnels, and there are others.
Well, there are two basic ones, Portal Bridge and Hudson Tunnels. Everything else is smaller.
Right. And our responsibility is to advance those projects through the development process so that we're overseeing the engineering and the environmental process. And as John has mentioned, the Portal Bridge has completed the environmental process, and that's ready. The Hudson Tunnels were in the middle of
but you're not answering my question. As Mr. Procari said, if there are no new FFGAs, if the core funding, core capacity grants are phased down, there is no possibility of the Gateway project, the Portal Bridge, and the Gateway and the tunnels going ahead. So again, if the administration proposes to cut these important transportation programs, how does the administration expect to fund the Gateway project? Or do you think, I mean, it's one or the other, either there has to be a way the administration is thinking of funding the project, or it thinks that we can let the Northeast Corridor fall apart. Which is it?
So what I can speak to is our role at FRA in the process.
Excuse me, I'm not interested in the process. how how does the administration envision, in light of its budget proposals, that this admittedly key core project for the country will be funded?
And again, in my position, what I can speak to is we take each project as they come to us. When funding is provided and when it's available, we evaluate those projects. We do the environmental work associated with them.
That's very nice, but how do you envision the projects going forward, given the project? I mean, I assume the administration, in making its budget proposal, thinks of these things. Given the administration's budget proposal, how can this project go forward? Is there any way it can go forward? I'm not interested in the environmental assessment. How can it be funded if the administration proposal and the budget goes forward? Or does the administration think it shouldn't be funded?
So at the risk of being redundant, I apologize, Congressman. Again, my role in this process is to evaluate what's in front of us.
Well, let me say my time is running out. Let me just ask then, if the administration, if you go back to the administration and get for this committee a reply, if Congress were to agree with the administration's budget proposals, how the administration envisions the Gateway project being funded, and if it can't answer that question, does it think the Gateway project is not crucial to the country? It's got to either think it isn't crucial, and so why bother funding it, or it is crucial, in which case it has to have in mind a way of funding it, one or the other. So which is it, and please specify. So I'm asking that you get us an answer for that question.
I'd be happy to bring that back to the department, get your response.
Thank you. I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Nadler. Mr. Mitchell, you recognized for 5 minutes.